Hey guys, glad you're here at Mystifying Miracles. Today's story, it's going to be about a pastor and what he witnessed on one Sunday morning when a miraculous fog overtook the sanctuary where he was filling in as a worship director. This is amazing, guys. You're going to want to hear this. There were several testimonies where this occurred. So stay tuned and we'll get into it. There was a man by the name of Charles Harrel, and he was a pastor of a church, and all his life, he had wanted to just witness a miracle. And not just any miracle. He wanted to witness a full-blown, amazing miracle that would just leave him in awe. And he thought, he would have experienced that by now being a pastor, but he hadn't. Well, one Saturday afternoon, he had an encounter with the supernatural. Now, Charles attended an Assemblies of God church in Portland, Oregon, and he had many duties or jobs, you could say, there. And on a Saturday afternoon, before this Sunday service that we'll speak about in a moment, he had been getting ready to do worship practice, and he really wanted to find something new song-wise because sometimes you just need something new to introduce to the church. So he decided to walk across the street from the church where there happened to be a Christian bookstore. And he was just going to run in there, look real quick, see what he could find. He's going to be acting as the worship director that Sunday instead of the pastor. So he was in charge of all the music and stuff. So he's in this bookstore and he's looking and he's like, gosh, I hope I find something. And he notices this display of music and CDs that wasn't too far from him. So he walks over to it, picks one out, he turns it over on the back and he starts to read. And one song in particular stood out to Charles, and it was the song, I Will Never Be by Jeff Bullock. And he thought about it for a moment and he knew he had to hurry because he was almost late for practice already. So he says, this sounds good. Maybe this will work. So he grabs it, pays for it, and then heads over to practice. Well, Sunday comes and his wife, Laura, she was the piano player at the church. So she begins introducing the new song to the people that are sitting in the sanctuary, and she starts playing the piano. And it was about halfway through the song when the rest of the worship team also joined in, like the singing and the other instruments and all that good stuff. However, something strange began to occur when that happened, and Charles describes it because he's sitting in the pews. He's not on stage with them. He's sitting there and he's singing and he's worshiping. He said it felt like something sharp had stabbed him in the chest, like in the heart. And it was sudden. He said he felt hot, but yet not unpleasant. So he's feeling this and he's like, oh my goodness, what is that? So he starts looking around and glancing at other people in the pews because he wants to see if they're noticing this or what's going on because he'd never felt this before. And, a few of them looked back at him and just smiled and was cordial. So he's just thinking to himself, like, what in the world? He said all was normal. Besides him feeling that burning feeling. And he said the chorus began of the song. And that's when everything stopped. The singing stopped, all of it. And Charles, he glances at his wife up at the piano, and she's no longer singing. The rest of the worship team, slowly just came to a halt, stopped singing. And he's looking. All of the worship team people on the stage seemed like they were having trouble standing up. And he's looking at this and he's like, what is going on? He's still just confused. However, because all of them are having trouble standing, he knows something is clearly different, wrong, odd, however you want to describe it. He knew something was very off. So Charles runs up to the stage because he wants to offer assistance, see if anybody needs help, and just be of help. Well, he notices this glow around the pulpit area, and so he's starting to look at it, and he's wondering, where is that coming from? He he cannot decipher. And as that's going on, he said after he ran on the stage, it felt like the sanctuary as a whole all of a sudden got about 15 degrees hotter. And his first thought about that was, okay, maybe the janitor accidentally knocked the heat button, instead of the AC. So he's thinking that was just a common mistake. As that thought's happening, he starts to look up, Charles does, and he notices this foggy mist, and it's way up at the top of the ceiling of the sanctuary. And it's a fog, so it's not like it's black billy smoke like a fire. And then also it slowly starts coming down. Well, heat rises, so definitely not a fire. So he's just like, whoa, what am I looking at? His wife, Laura, then slowly starts to play the piano again. And he looks over at her and she's kind of silently mouthing the words to the song. And she's got her eyes closed, Charles said, as that's happening. So then right after that, Charlie, who was the drummer, he begins breaking out in this fantastic drum solo, which leaves Charles like, what? Charles says he remembers thinking oh my goodness, I had no idea Charlie could play the drums that well. And he said after the drum solo ended, Charlie stopped playing altogether and he just sat there real still. He said there was a guitar player by the name of Eddie who just kind of slowly kept strumming his guitar, but he looked at all the other guitar players on stage and it was almost as if they'd forgotten how to play. They didn't know the chords or anything. Even the bass player, he stops altogether playing and he just kind of sits down there on the stage, and Charles remembers the bass player just hugging his bass guitar up close to him. There were also two vocalists by the name of Sylvia and Peggy. They had stopped singing, and they in fact also were now kneeling there on the stage with their heads almost completely down, in a kneeling position. And their microphones, they were kind of just sitting right next to him on the ground. And Charles says that's when he felt it right behind his knees, that area of the back of his legs. He said it felt like a riptide or a swift current had just come out of nowhere and went, whoa, and knocked him off his feet. And he said when that happened, he totally understood now. He's like, oh, this makes sense. No wonder no one can stand up that was in the worship team. Well, now everyone in that church is on the ground. They're kneeling or they can no longer stand. So some of them were even in a prone position, all the way flat, their bodies with their heads facing down. Not a one person could stand in that sanctuary. He said after that unseen force had knocked them all down, he said he started hearing giggling, from children. So Charles starts looking around what's going on? Who is that? And he sees all the little kids and they're looking up towards the ceiling of the sanctuary and they're just giggling. And Charles said their little eyes were just following something back and forth as they laughed. Well, later on, he actually talked to one of those children that had been giggling, and the child told Charles that, well, in the misty fog up in the sanctuary, they saw this big outline of a hand, and it was kind of waving back and forth just over everyone in the church. And the kids they found it. I guess it made them giggle. But there were also several adults that day that also saw the outline of the hand waving back and forth. There were many accounts that witnessed it. And one of those adults was actually Laura, Charles's wife. Charles states that when the service technically ended, it really didn't end. And I'll explain that. It's like the miracles kept on flowing the rest of that day. Charles said no one was in a rush to leave that sanctuary that day. Not a one. And I'm sure if you've ever been to a church service or you belong to a church, you know what I mean. There's always some that, try to sneak out or leave before the full service is over. But there was none of that going on. Everybody was just left in awe. Charles spoke to several people, including the child I just mentioned. And he spoke to this one gentleman who had been sitting in the pews for the service. And this gentleman his name was Carl. He dealt with severe back pain for years. I mean, we're talking decades. And he had done all the treatments and done everything he could to try to help it. Well, after the service that day, no more back pain for Carl, and it never returned. I mean, he was completely healed. And no one that day, Charles said, it's not like people laid hands on him or even prayed for him. It was just Carl being there in that service, and he was healed from that back pain. There was also a married couple that had attended that church service that day, and their marriage had been on the rocks for a while. I mean, they had done counseling, they had tried everything, and so they'd pretty much decided that divorce was the way to go for them. Well, after the service that day, that divorce never happened. Charles said he spoke to that couple, and after that service and throughout that day, it was almost like they had fallen in love again with each other. And all of the bad stuff, whatever that was, I'm not sure. It didn't go into the details of it, but it's like it was washed away. And their relationship was renewed. And so that was another amazing testimony from that service. Charles said that God used one song. Remember, he just went over across the street the day ahead of time and picked out that CD that had the song on it. But God used it, and he used it to release and pour out miracles over the people that day. And I mean, he accomplished what many back treatments for Carl could never do. Counseling for the married couple, what that couldn't do. God did, and it was beautiful. There was also one more guy I want to tell you about, and he was not in the service, okay? He was just walking out on the sidewalk, and he happened to be passing the sanctuary that morning. Well, as he's passing the service, he could hear this worship and the music, and he said the melody he heard, it's like it overtook him. He said he was compelled to enter that church. He didn't know why, he couldn't explain it. He said, it's like I had to. And so this man that's just walking by, he decides he's got to do it. So he goes into the sanctuary. And upon entering, he says he notices the fog and the mist, like filling up the whole church. And a warm sensation overcomes this gentleman. And he said that he just dropped to his knees and he wept and he cried for hours that day. And I mean, he was transformed because this guy happened to be a drug addict and an abuser of substances and whatnot. But when he left that day, all of those urges were gone and he was healed of it. And Charles said that man's life was changed forever and he never did go back to using. So, I mean, these are just a handful of what Charles witnessed and spoke with people. He said there were more. There were several more that experienced miracles that were in that sanctuary that day. And I love how at the end of the story, Charles puts it this way. He says, every once in a while, there is a song that touches heaven. That song, it can turn into a fiery prayer. And God, he answers back. And miracle after miracle begins to pour out. And he said, and I agree with this last part too, Charles says that when that happens, when that person experiences or witnesses a miracle, they're never the same again. I agree. I get chills talking about it. When my miracle happened in late 2023, I was not the same, guys. I can't describe that in words because there are none. And that's so frustrating sometimes because I'm like, man, I want people to feel and see what I felt that day and have felt thus far since that day. But I can't, so that part's frustrating. But man, I'm telling you, If you've had a miracle, guys, I want to hear about it. I want to hear about what transformed you, what changed, how did you view people and how, view life in general. But yeah, I just want to know how things changed for you for the positive. It just fills my heart to hear it. I hope you guys enjoyed this story. It just makes me cheese real hard. I smile, my cheeks hurt. But I hope you did too. I hope you enjoyed it. And as I usually say as of late, if nothing else, puts a smile on your face. And I hope you guys have an incredible rest of your week. God bless. And I'll see you next time.